We must quickly restore the economy.
You want persons who are known that they are straightforward persons. People, at least, who have had an opportunity but did not steal. I am not sure that I'm being accused of having overstayed there, because personally I know that when No, it is important, ladies and gentlemen, to own up that for a long period, there were those of us who believed that we could have cleansed KANU from inside. And it is true that in 1988 was our Rubicon. We shall be able to make sure that the taxpayers' money goes to providing social services for the taxpayer. My commitment is that we would form a government of national unity. A government of national unity of all parties, so that we can use the best manpower and the women power in those particular parties.
When we were struggling against Majimbo and the centralized government, my position was also firm and clear. When we came to independence and we had to talk about whether we would go communist or communist socialist, or whether we would go for a freer economy, again, my position was very clear, and we defined it in the famous session of paper number 10 of 1965. Later on, there came a crisis within the country between those who wanted to nationalize everything and those of us who believed that nationalization would not solve our economic problems. Again, I took my position very precisely. We were against nationalization. So I am saying, now when it came, for instance, to the succession after Kenyatta, there was a crisis, and I was amongst those who persisted that we must honor the constitution of the nation. So in every time when there has been a major issue facing us as a nation, I have never been hesitant to take a decision.
Right, so museum there from our archives, just sentiments of Kibaki regarding the running of the country, of course also of the party, and we know how instrumental he was as well during the installation of Section 2 of the Constitution, that we were now breaking away from the single party to multi-party. But that is just, by the way, just to refresh your memory, the topic at hand is we're just looking at the banks and the sustainability report and how profitable is supernormal profit they're making as well, looking at the top tier banks. Before we took a short break, of course, we were to hear from Bilo Kero. Bilo, I wanted just to pick up from there, but maybe you can comment, just remembering Kibaki as well. You worked hand in hand with Kibaki, right? Any fond memories?
Now, let me... Well, I've watched what the...
We scratch your political sides now.
Yes, you've just aired, but I'm sure that was before 2008.
Oh, yes.
Then 2008 was different. But, and of course, he was also... he worked very closely with Moi also for a long time before he jumped ship. But I think the one thing I know about Kibaki, because I was in Parliament at the time when he was the president, is he was a bit more professional. You know, he was not a guy of vendetta or a guy of vengeance or a guy who gets involved on petty issues. And you know, he was always, he had that statesmanship attitude, you know, up there. And he looks at, and I remember I was in opposition. And I remember I went to a CS Energy and asked that I want electricity in my in my constituency. And he told me, my friend, you are in opposition, so you get lost. I told him, okay, I'm going to see the president. I'm going to see the president, because the president is very clear that development is exactly what he said, is for the whole country. It doesn't matter your political party.
You are not a shareholder.
And before I could leave, he said, okay, come back. Yeah. And they eventually put electricity in my constituency because of that. But so he was very clear. I mean, he wasn't, I don't think this patterns we see nowadays. You know, we are shareholders and you have to do this. And it wasn't, he tried his best. Even with the new constitution when it came in, I think when Parliament stood up to him on appointment of, for example, the Attorney General or this or that or DPP, he has always been very clear, and he said, okay, they have their way. If you confront him with the Constitution, then he would give up. But so to some extent, yes, I would agree with some of the things that he said.
All right.
On the Kibaki also?
You are okay. If you have a comment.
Yes, just before he passed away, I remember finding him in the Vet Lab golf course, admiring golfers on hole number 18. And he was all alone, nobody talked to him. And I regret I did not go and talk to him and take a photo of him. But what struck me about Kibaki is, I remember reading and seeing him on the TV as a young boy. And politically and economically, he was always a very consistent person. He knew exactly what the country needed, and he tried his best to carry through, to follow through, using the language of golf. He made sure there was a follow through. And I think that's what we need in this country, people who have a vision of the country. He came up with Vision 2030, which we rarely mention nowadays. And I'm surprised 7 years to the end of Vision 2030, nobody has come up with Vision 2040 or 2060 and so on. So I remember him as an economist who really did what economists are supposed to do, turned out the economy. And surprising enough, everybody is saying we want to be like Kibaki. That's what all the politicians are saying. But I doubt what they are doing really reflects the values and the virtues of Mwai Kibaki. And we should always remember him as one of the best presidents.
Right.
And finally, nothing is named after him. But we remember him more than those whose streets and avenues and so on are named after.
Indeed.
Except one.
There's
one place named after him, and he should be knowing that.
It's just a library in Wakabete campus.
Yeah, that's the only building named after him.
But
and it was a struggle.
But
it was a struggle to get him green to it.
But we have to give it to him. He's actually the one who never wanted even the Thika Highway.
Yeah,
named after him.
He refused 3 times.
That is the mark of humility.
The mark of humility. So he was very
I remember even sending Nikwa Johi and Kamau, the CS then, and the third time he said, I've heard what you have been telling them. Hiyo jia tunakula inatoka na kula inaenda.
EJ inaenda. EJ inatoka wapi?
Na kula inaenda.
Inaenda wapi? Mbona unataka kuita Kibaki?
Sasa inaenda Kibaki wapi?
Yeye Kibaki wapi?
But there's something he said, and I think we should remember. I really remember him. And those who interacted, and I think XN, you could when you were in the NESC as a researcher, and I being the vision, was that he listened. And when he listened, he made his decision. The core one time on 2nd floor on Harambee Avenue, there was Naikuni, there was Uhuru, and there was Kimunya. Kimunya was in transport. Uhuru was in Treasury, and Naikuni was KQ. And the debate was about Kenya KQ getting his own terminal. And here Uhuru was saying there's no money to do it. Kibaki saying no, Kimunya, any national airlines in their country, they have their own terminal. And he listened, and there was an argument here, and he said, na hiyo terminal tutafanya. The meeting ended. Now we have terminal 1 for KQ. But he said, readers, and he listened, and he don't shout all the way, we shall do this. You see happening. Right. And he said, leaders are elected to serve the people, but not to enrich themselves.
Indeed. And
if that narrative, you can see where he was coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
I was expecting maybe when Exxon Iraqi will be talking about Vision 2030, he'll be looking your side. Because that was also a
he was a think tank.
No. because you're sitting next to the CEO. You should ask the CEO what was the strategy for Vision 2040. Yeah, what was the handover? The Director General.
2030. I think that's
you should ask that question.
I think the bar, with all due respect, that is soft at a bit of Kenyan politics. Whether you look at the county level, ward level, national level, when you come to power, you start disparaging other people's projects. You start starting yours. You start yours instead of continuing what they started. Some very nice projects. So I think that continuity of government national projects should be taken more seriously. They should not be dependent on who is in power. They should be dependent on the needs of the Kenyan citizens.
All right. So was it going beyond the Vision 2030?
We actually tried to, and Bill, we are there, we tried to actually put it in law, in the sense that Vision 2030 is not party-driven. However, the party has a lot of responsibility on that. And that's why you notice it's 5 years. It was aligned with the 5 years of somebody coming to power. So we notice it's 2013 to 2017, 27 to 22. So whoever comes in, you are aligned to the vision. However, if there are things you feel should come in, for example, if you look at the 5 pillars of the Kwanzaa government, and they are not, you can fast track them within the vision. Because anything you talk about there was among the 3 pillars: the economic, social, and the political. Talk of anything there, it's there. The big 4, they were all within the Vision 2030. But we give the politicians an opportunity. 2013, Ruto, now the president, and Uhuru, say we need the laptops, and was brought in to the midterm plan. But the whole process of Vision 2030, I think the point is saying, as a nation, as even as an individual, you must know where you are going. And I recall, with all respect, when I was in Form 2, I did it, one day I want to be a professor, and thank God, inshallah. And I remember because I wrote it 2 Fs instead of 1 F. Yeah? and my mind was very clear. And as a nation, that's what I'm saying. 35 years, McPhee, Singapore said we would be first world. But they cut, what Iraqi would say, they had a follow through. We say by 2030, high quality life for all Kenyans. Yeah? Do an analysis today. And I can say this on a national TV very, very clear. After Kibaki died, the people who took responsibility of this country dropped the ball. Right. They really dropped the ball.
You know, the Vision 2030 has been mutilated over the last 10 years of Kibaki, of Uhuru. And it's not, you can say all these policies, big 4, whatever, dovetails into the whatever, but the reality is we are off track completely.
Absolutely.
The 2030 was highly participative document. I remember they went everywhere in the country to try and get in.
Absolutely.
And it had, you know, a complete matrix of timelines and everything. But I think, unfortunately, then everyone comes with his own. Now we have something called Better, which is in place. Yeah, but I think that is the challenge. But you know, Kibaki's time they had very sober people running government, you know, and who knew how to manage public service, people like Ambassador Budaura and others. And so he had people who knew what they were doing, and people were given the latitude to push on to that objective, that goal that was set in within the 2030 to some extent. So especially in the last the second term of his presidency, things were on track. But well, I guess a lot has changed since then. So we don't seem to have that Vision 2030. Yep. So we can go back to our
yes, yeah. Unless McPhee, he wanted to comment on the Vision 2030 as well. McPhee?
No, but we go back to, we have an incredible plan. Do we implement it? That is our big problem all the time. It's and some of the documents which are produced by the government and all sorts of entities in Kenya are fantastic documents.
Beautiful.
But, and we have laws about everything, but in fact, I'm doing some research with one of my students, and she was saying that, well, I was pointing out to her, look, we've got a law, but do we follow it? And, sometimes when you go to one government department, which has a particular, deals with something, even business, and you actually talk about the Companies Act, Watcha. They don't even know almost that it exists, that we have a new Companies Act from 2015. They're not aware of it. And they are regulators. They're regulators of businesses.
It's so sad when you mention that. Let me mention this one, because we have Media Term Plan 4. Very clear, 2022 to 2027. It now goes with the cycle of the current government. That document was supposed to be launched as soon as who becomes the president. So it was supposed to be launched end of last year. Up to today, they come in the office. This is not And that document, I like what you say, went through participation up to the counties. It drives the CIDPs so that the counties get the cue from the national government, and therefore they work on that. Right now it's limbo. We don't know where it is. And officers in government spent time. And the good thing is linked to it's actually linked to Agenda 2063, it's linked to SDGs. So when you plug in Vision 2030, so you're looking at the whole concept in the whole world. And to me, the beauty, and we must thank the President Kibaki, the beauty of Vision 2030 was insensitive to any party. It was good. It was not driven by this party, but it said we must look at the economic of the country.
Right, thank you.
We must look at the social and the political. That's it.
Thank you. Right. Just, of course, picking up their memories of Mike Kibaki with also the Vision 2030. Right. We circle back to where we're discussing the sustainability.
It was a very good break.
It was a good break. Yeah. So we come back to it as well. And Bill Okero, we want to get it with you. Well, there are issues, and I can see so many Safaricom. The banks as well, being led by Equity, KCB, or the sustainability financing and reporting a bit of it. But the interrogation, the auditing of it, how has it kept in tandem with this report? Do we have also very robust in auditing metrics for the sustainability reporting?
You know, this sustainability is about businesses having a long-term business success through the support to the socio-economic aspects of the economy, particularly focusing on the ESGs. And the banking sector we have talked about, for example, KCB,
yes.
Has its focus very clear that they want at least a quarter of all the debt portfolio to be in climate or financing. They're very clear on that, and that's why they've been leading on that. They're the key movers in that direction. But in terms of the audits, yes, if you are an NSC, Nairobi Stock Exchange listed institution like those banks we have looked at, they are to be audited, and there are specific requirements on corporate governance relating to ESGs that you must comply with, and I think it's the responsibility of auditors to ensure that, in addition, of course, there are international accounting standards also now that have been introduced, that you must also comply in that regard. So I think from what you're asking is, do they walk the talk? Is this just about getting money from global climate funds, and or is it really about putting money into those areas? I think not really. I agree that it is not, because one of the challenges in this country, our biggest challenge is in food security, is agriculture. And this is one of the ESG areas, this climate area, these are critical, water, agriculture. You know, these are the areas which have serious challenges in this country. And those are the areas that are still receiving very little support in terms of financing from our banks. And so, despite the fact that there's a lot of money available, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars available in this area, the kind of financing that you see the banks are talking about when they are those ones that, because our banks are only concerned about risks. It's putting some solar pumps for you on your river, or you know, they're not really going into where the ordinary people really need support. And these are all about sustainability, really. Those are the areas where we need support, and the banks are not financing that. Particularly the agriculture, in the water sector, those areas, that is where the challenge is. Yeah, so I think that, of course, the technical aspects of audits are being done, but in terms of are we really benefiting the country, the areas who need it, the people who need support in those particular areas, no, our banks are still elitist. They don't go down into those areas.
They don't go down
to avoid the risks.
But how then do we also give accountability? Because we just had the climate summit in the country, and a lot of eye-popping figures were quoted in terms of you know, just giving this funding to Kenya, Africa. But how, if we take it from maybe the corporate level to the government level, on the reporting on this sustainability, how is there any metrics? Is there any sort of gauge that we have that there is accountability for these finances? or we are working with a vacuum as it is, then when money comes is when we'll figure out how we can present a report. Because I have no starting idea if anything like that is within the purview of government. I mean,
no, accountability exists. You see, all this climate, we have a law. We have clear laws on the climate issues in the country. But the money that is available also are given to you subject to, depending on which institution gives money to the banks here. There's money given to the banks for lending to these areas of climate-related areas. And then there's money that goes to other civil society groups and so forth, that goes to others. But the focus really is the money that is going into government and into financial institutions. This is where the chunk of the money is actually going. Government, when it gets money, it simply goes into the usual budget finance. And when you read the budgets, then you are told, we have climate related areas, we've gone into this and going, that disappears into that. Accountability is difficult to do.
That's accountability is difficult. That's why now the money will be, it's a black hole. Yeah, it's really a
that's why the issue of the governance. That's why governance comes in ESG.
But even if you have the governance and still it's a black hole, how do you account for that?
The only money that the governments have focused on is the ones given to the corporate sector through the banks. And this one's about, that's why the focus you saw is about the carbon credit audits and so forth. But what goes to government and whether the government actually finances, uses that money to support. For example, I'll tell you the area I come from, Northeastern. The story about government measures or mitigation measures against drought, for which funding is available through the adaptation. It's there, but in reality, the last 10 years we've been talking about it, nothing happens. Literally, we put a small dam there and a small pond there, and then nothing much happens. But when you go to those conferences and you saw it, the focus is, Africa, we're the worst hit. We want money for adaptation, we want money for mitigation, and these things come, they go to the budget, they end up in something else.
We have COP28 coming.
So the drought comes, 3 million, 4 million animals die, farmers lose everything, nothing happens.
Yeah, it sounds like another confidential account.
I'm liking these debates, but maybe Prof should also come in and tell us whether it's an accounting standard that focuses on ESG specifically. Yeah, if we talk about sustainability,
corporates,
we need to first of all ask a very simple question. Are we moving that way because it is fashionable or because we are really serious about it? I know the moment people start talking about climatic change, everybody has got into that. Whether you're in corporate sector, private sector, everybody is talking about climatic change. But is it because it's fashionable, it's from our heart? So if you look at banks, for example, do they fund sustainable projects or any that will improve on the bottom line? We have a project coming to this country of a nuclear reactor that is costing $500 billion, or a coal plant. If the bank was told to fund that, would they say, no, that's not sustainable, we are not going to touch it?
Is it a mini nuclear reactor?
Yes. Okay. So are we serious that we cannot fund such a project despite the money we are going to make from it? So I'm hoping that the issue of climatic change, the issue of sustainability is not driven by emotions but reality. My colleague here talked about Marsabit and other places. I grew up in the countryside. I go to the countryside and I see how the rivers have dried up. I see how the distance women and men cover to look for water. I see the forests have disappeared. We talk about trees and logging and planting new trees. But I think the reporting is not important. I agree with all of you. It is what is done. And very important, what can benefit the ordinary person. People who are not here and people who will not even read those reports, how do they benefit? And remember, Kenya is about 29% urbanized. So 71% of Kenyans are in the rural areas. And those are the people we should be talking about. Those are the people we should be asking, what will they eat tomorrow? Will they get water? Will they get fresh air? Will they take their kids to school? So sustainability should not be for the elites. They should be the people on the streets, the ordinary people in the countryside who are not talking the English we are talking here, who may not even know what's the difference between SG and so on. And that should be our focus even here.
Right, so you'd ask about accountability within the ESG as well. And I remember just hearing that you were talking about integrated thinking. And within also the financial reporting, we have the integrated reporting, right? Where you focus not only just on the profits, but also the planet and the people. This is where you can tell us more about the integrated reporting. I think also this is a new concept that is coming in handy with the sustainable reporting. Is it the sustainable reports? Is it part of the integrated reporting?
You see, when, Deval, you got, I think it's a very pertinent point that you brought up. When you talk about integrated reporting, in fact, you're saying, look, you know, an annual report focuses very, very much on the financial results of the entity. And that's incredibly important, because if a business is not earning a profit, it's going to die eventually, okay? And that's
except Kenya Airways.
Except at Kenya Airways. For example, in Namibia, they said, look, you know, we can't make this airline profitable, so let's close it. But we will, I don't think we'll make that decision in Kenya, but, you know, I think it's always so important. And on a previous occasion, okay, we're actually talking about Kenya Airways here, and all of us said, well, look, we don't fly Kenya Airways because they are one of the most expensive airlines to fly on. And a friend of mine was coming back from Johannesburg, okay, South African Airways, Ethiopian Airways, and Kenya Airways. The line for South African Airways and Kenya Airways was incredibly short. The one on Ethiopian was, you know, was almost out the door of Oliver Tambo Airport in Johannesburg. Why? Because you can fly to South Africa for $100 less if you actually fly all the way to Addis Ababa and then again down to Johannesburg. So Kenya Airways, you know, you got to get some business people in there rather than some, okay, they've got a very eminent board, you're talking about chairman and so on, but, you know, the fact is they've got to become business people. That's another story, okay? But you know, look, you can have a Mzungu who is bure kabisa, bure, CMC. You look at CMC. You know, what's your function? I want to sell cars in Africa. Well, you're not managing this company. In their last year, when they were a public company, they earned a profit of 545 million shillings, record. And operations absorbed 1.2 billion shillings. They were going into bankruptcy. And I was looking at this situation, and then, of course, well, the whole saga of, you know, the board decided, get this man out of here, get this Mzungu out of here, okay? Enda, you know. And then they brought in another Mzungu, and he was blah, 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 blah. And then they brought in Mary, whatever her name is, a very, very competent person. She'd been at Deloitte. But let us go back to this thing of sustainability reporting. Now, you were talking about audits.
Yes.
The only sustainability report at the moment that is audited is that of Safaricom. It's audited. I don't know whether the present one is PricewaterhouseCoopers or Deloitte, but I've got those audit reports, okay? And, you know, they are the ones who audit the sustainability report, because as you point out, there's a lot of greenwashing. You know, we just simply say we're doing this, that, and the other. It's interesting that you bring this up, because 2 days ago, the International Federation of Accountants said, look, this ESG thinking, environmental, social, and governance thinking, has got to be in governments. And they were suggesting, and they also were saying that this has got to be audited, and the initiative has got to come from what's known as the Supreme Audit Institutions. Now, the Supreme Audit Institutions in countries is the government auditor. Okay, so we used to call it KENAO, the Kenya National Audit Office, okay, but now it's the Office of the Auditor General, OAG. Yeah. Okay, and you know, there are competent people there. But you see, the United Nations has said, look, how is the government of the country going towards the 17 SDGs? Okay, these are the goals that, you know, we want, you know, clean air, clean water, good education, blah, 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 blah. All of those 17 items, okay? Now, they asked countries to do a report on this. Tanzania did a report. Uganda did a report. Kenya? Wacha. Keshu kutwa labda. We haven't got our report. And, you know, I mentioned this, in fact, I mentioned this to KPMG because maybe, but the Office of the Auditor General, you see, they've got to take that up. They're the ones who are meant to do that. So, you know...
So maybe there's no metrics in place.
Well, you see, there are. If you actually look at the sustainability report of Safaricom, they're using less power, okay? They're using solar instead of diesel generators. They're trying to use less paper.
No, I'm talking about the Auditor General's office. Since you're talking about the Supreme Auditor. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, well, you see, the general feeling in the audit industry in Kenya is that they don't have the capacity. But look, Nancy Gathungu is one clever lady, and she's honest, and she's a hard-working person. And, you know, they've got tremendous capacity there. But, you know, somehow when we go to government institutions in Kenya, they're just not delivering. You know, we've got to have, I tell my students, look, Kenya works if I make it work. Not, you know, the sun is shining, the rain is falling, we've got agriculture and so on. No, we've got to have personal responsibility for our country. Okay? So, but you know, you tell me, who at the top has Kenya at heart, rather than walking in front of the car to show that I'm walking to work with 2 security guys behind me and 3 chase cars behind me. You know, this is, you know, I'm showing the 1 inch. I want to, you know, we're all Payukaris, we're all Maneno, and you know, we've got our 2030 but you know, are we implementing it? We've got to talk about that. So the fact is that are these things being audited at the moment? The answer is no. And the problem is precisely what you were mentioning a little bit earlier, that you can have a good report, but what's happening there on the ground
does not reflect.
Exactly.
All right. I want to just even as we bring it to a close, below, where we have a case in point of Mavoko, and we can talk about now sustainability, especially for a company like East Africa Portland Cement, where now action of the people, the planet, and the profit comes to play. We are on the sharpest edge of a dilemma, morally, so to speak. You have your land that has been encroached on, or the cases have not been very germane, fraudulence also coming into play. But then how do you apply sustainability? Because this is a quasi-government entity, or is it fully here? When we talk about corporate governance, this is where now we should be walking the talk. That we have a people who were encroached on your huge parcel of land, and we saw the notice that they put out again on the regularization. So they claim back the land, they evict the people, then they put it out again on sale. That's what I'm asking. Does it really make any lick of sense completely, morally? And when you're talking about ESG, the social governance of it, even in your reporting, if they do any integrated reporting, then how have you affected the people? Positively or negatively? How will that be?
No,
the context of Mavoko now
East African Portland Cement is not a company that complies with ESG, or I mean, it's not a company quoted on in the stock.
It is, it is.
It's quoted.
It's quoted. But they have been doing terribly bad.
I thought they were delisted when they were almost performing so badly the last few years.
They're still there.
They're still there. Yeah, but it's really been doing so badly that I'm surprised it's still listed. But clearly they know
when it is listed. The corporate governance of it should
at least yes. I mean, you wouldn't have this kind of chaos that you have seen. You know, you wait for 30, 40, 50 years your land to be taken. Then eventually, when such a decision is made, the best decision that actually should have been taken is to call in all the people there and say, look, okay, we have now got a court ruling. Can you buy the land? Because you are clearly not using the land. This land is not good for
any expansion,
expansion or for any of the raw materials that they're using it. They have not. If it was, then they would have used it actually, but they're not using it. So the government, the company should have, as a matter of policy, immediately as a board engaged the people who have invested in that land, but now to demolish the land and then come back and say now you can apply for the same land. I think it was a stupid decision. Clearly, I mean, anybody who saw that thought this is how could an institution really? Clearly, it's driven by these are institutions which are owned by government. The decisions are to a large extent made by people in other offices in government and not necessarily by the board of that company. And we know, in particularly regarding that land, it's all about, various attempts have been made by people in government to take that land. It's all about the land, really. So this is why, even when it's listed as one of the companies that the government might sell, the focus really is that land. And many of us thought the reason why this attempt to evict is coming in is because then whoever is getting into buying East African Portland cement will be getting land worth 40-50 billion shillings. And that is, the way land generally in the balance sheets, it would be at cost in most of these companies, understated significantly. So that then you're buying this company at a very cheap price. That has been the argument in East African Portland for a long time. So not surprising what has happened.
Mm-hmm. Right. Professor.
Yes, I mentioned that earlier on. It's interesting about it. And sort of argument with somebody. What would you have done if in that position where now the court of law has declared that you are there illegally? Mm-hmm. And I like the point. We must have a very clear policy of dealing with that, because we have a lot of this in this country. And the clip was you playing the other day was interesting. When we were campaigning, we say this will never happen again. And what would it have taken to get somebody like CS Interior? Mm-hmm. Say, go sit there. This land doesn't belong to you because you don't have the title. You have invested in all this land. What's the best way forward? Put them on their defense. The people who have built the houses there, put them on their defense. And the question comes in, yes, you're illegally here. Mm-hmm. We appreciate you have invested. It's the best option to come and clear it. And be told we have the strength and the audacity to say we are going to bid off the sugar belt this so many billions. We are bidding it all. I feel the option you could have done. And I'm not condoning squatters. Let me not go wrong. Because you must have a title. You must ownership to that piece of land. That is important. But taking that into consideration, you must also go a step further. That XN has put some resources here. And all you're doing, and this is where it's absurd, is one day you wake up and you're destroying wealth. That's what we did. We woke up and destroyed wealth. Now, let's not go to the motives, but let's deal with it. Sit down with the community. Your house is worth 100 million. It's on this land doesn't belong to you. What's the best thing to go about it? I bet there would have been a negotiated way of dealing with those at Maboko. And some people coming strongly, they should have been thrown out. That's fine. They will go. But what's that route? What is that route for making them more? Now, look at kids are coming to, they're starting the exam on Monday. Since whatever is started, they have nowhere to sleep. One Mzee got his pension, so the lad in Ukabani put it there. It's raining now, you're out there. So those are the things you bring the utu. Wewe ni mtoto wa nani? Ndani kwako uko na nini kama mwanadamu?
Within the context of the utu,
yes, and
the people.
Yes.
Prof, you see, this thing is, government has a mandate under the Constitution to provide housing.
Yes.
Government.
Yes.
They have a mandate under the Constitution to provide housing for Kenyans.
Indeed.
This thing, if it was a private, your own land taken,
yes,
it would be a different matter. But if it's something owned largely by government, and government itself has a mandate to provide housing, what the government should have done is to have considered selling this land or find a solution rather than demolish houses. I don't think that should have been a decision the government should have taken.
My heart of hearts tells me there was a better way to do it, and they really move from there. You cannot tell me, for example, that we want to do affordable housing. I hope that's not the case, because that will make no sense in my view.
You're building houses for people, and here you're demolishing for others.
Exactly, that will not make sense to me.
The irony of it is
Further,
Yeah.
even if for EPZ, sure, it won't make sense to me. I don't bring EPZ at the expense of destroying wealth of people here. EPZ is not to create wealth. So there could have a very good negotiated.
And everyone has a title. Every building was approved by government. Every title was issued by government. Can you imagine?
That's what I'm saying. You can still have the title at the end of the day, but you need to determine.
But how do I
how
do
the
due diligence? I'm
efficacy-
told how do I as a Kenyan know
No, the due
if I go to
diligence.
Ministry of Land and I'm given a title,
that is fake or not. Yeah.
government office?
And it's government's office.
You see, you are talking differently. This lady comes all the way from, she says she came all the way Moro and she has built there. When she gets a title, probably she doesn't have the understanding. Kuko na wakora huko. You're being brought a title and it all looks okay. Lakini ni ukora. So there's a certain level of our people, how they looked at things.
Right. You know, I was somewhere and I had a case in point completely. That I can speak knowing I was with this person. He's in the upper reaches of government. He's been there. And while we were talking, a lawyer walked in with documents and he put it on his table, and then of course he said thank you. He went away. Then he told me, you know, I've actually secured some document from the Ministry of Land because I wanted to have them with me. With this digitization thing that is happening, people are changing the titles. But now I've used this young man. He's gotten me these documents because I want to be with these documents. These things that are happening right now with the digitization, they're superimposing other names on the titles. Even him is afraid of his huge expanse of land that in the near future you might be told, yeah, you have a title, but the land is not yours. It has been given to someone else. So he'll rather game the system and have these documents and battle it in court. And this is where you're raising the question that even in the government offices, when you're given that particular title, how safe is it? And he talked about also the Ministry of Lands, the way, you know, the archives there. He told me when the way it's been built, the Arthi House, where they're supposed to be storing all these documents, even when there is an earthquake, that place remains to be very safe. It cannot be tampered by an earthquake. That's how it's been built. But he doesn't understand how, when they were doing the digitization, some of his documents are everywhere, even at the NIS, right? So they're not in safe custody, especially when the digitization was happening. So those are a matter of concern. So you have these people, you're having this, you know you have your title, but you cannot sit on it securely knowing that it's offering you any security. It could be just a false paper. And he was saying the ministry officials there, for 300,000 shillings, you could get a title. 300,000 shillings. That's the trade which is going on.
So the big debate changes from demolition to institutions. Are our institutions doing what they're supposed to do? I was perplexed.
We were still on the sustainability reports.
Yes.
All this is happening there with the corporate governance.
But let me make my comment on that. The day those demolitions were taking place, I remember seeing a report in Afghanistan. People losing houses because of earthquakes. You see houses being demolished and falling because of earthquake. And here we are demolishing homes deliberately because of a court order. I'm a big respecter of law. But I'm imagining at my age, I've saved all my money and now I'm building a house. And one day somebody comes and brings it down. And it is worse when it is brought by the government, because when everything goes wrong, I go to the government, run to the government for security.
Who do you run to?
So who do I run to if the government brings down my building? But there's a bigger issue here, that the demand for land in this country has really gone up. Everybody's looking for land, whichever means. And because we don't have alternative means of investment, everybody thinks land is the best way to invest. You either speculate on it, or you build a house, and you get returns from it. So we need some reforms in the way we view land in this country. We need some very serious reforms on how we protect assets like land. Because the population is going up, land is remaining constant. And there are a lot of people who can use any means to get land because they know it's very valuable. If that land at Mavoko was in Turkana just for the sake of Marsabit, nobody would have been bothered. But this is very strategic land. And up to this day, the owners of the land are not sure what happened. Us here, we don't know exactly what happened. So one of the things we want to come out is the truth. Who owns that land? When did they own it? Why is there a reversal in 24 hours that a land that where houses were being demolished, now you can own it? So what happened to the original owners? Will they be given first priority or preemptive rights to buy land, or other people come and buy it? So let's change our rules so that when I buy a piece of land, I know it is mine. When I own any asset, I know it is mine. And very important, the government protects that asset. Because when I feel the government is not on my side, then who do I go to? And I really sympathize with those people whose homes were destroyed. Because I personally don't have a house like the one that was being destroyed. And I'm just wondering what would have happened if that was my house that was brought down. So the law is there, but let's also, from my colleagues here, let's also be human. Those are Kenyans, they are not Syrians. They are Kenyans and they have the right to own land.
You don't know how many families have been broken.
We have enough laws. This is not about the law. You cannot walk into that land of East African Portland cement and take thousands of acres without the government of the day knowing. Let's not cheat ourselves.
That's true.
There's no way today you can walk into here at the river and take thousands of acres of East African Portland and no one government knows. No. This thing is given to people deliberately. By people up from the top to the bottom, and they know it. And then it's given to you, you subdivide, you sell, they make their billions. And then later, of course, the matter goes to court. The thing is nullified. And you're told, sorry, your house gets demolished. Yeah. But let me tell you, because the land was given to you, land ministry now, after subdivision, everyone is given its title. Those titles these guys own, it's not that they're fake. They have been genuinely issued by the Ministry of Lands. The only thing they're saying is that the basis on which this has been issued was on a fraudulent transfer in the first place. But you see now, if you go to court, I'm sure the commercial law and so forth, if I obtain a title to an asset through a third party, you cannot in court throw me out. That's why I believe all these guys, if they go to court, they have a case against South African Portland. The people who bought this thing genuinely got valid titles from the government. Their constructions were all approved, because even for the experts, when you draw those plans and send it to government for approval, it is with a copy of the title so that they can verify that this title is genuine. You cannot approve construction, the drawings, the technical drawings, without confirming that this title is genuine. You can't. So I think there are a lot of parties who are involved in this thing.
So we need the truth.
We need the truth. All right, we're coming to a session break. When we circle back, of course, we want to look at what the Muslim community are saying regarding the Israel-Gaza war, especially with the position of Africa Union, and how this also will affect you as a Kenyan moving forward in regard to the cost of living, expenses, the oil prices, are they bound to go up? We shall be looking at that more intensely. And by the way, if you're looking or reaching out for your phone to tap on that Bolt app, just be reminded, the prices have gone up. Yeah, so you'll be paying much more for that as well. And this is also following the report that Kenya right now, or the fuel consumption in the country has dropped to a 5-year low as Kenyans keep cars at home. And this is a countermanding effect of now raising the fuel taxes to 16%. As we speak, it is 217 just Sunday. That was raised by 5 shillings. Is it sustainable? All right. Government, or is government going to realize their targets as far as revenue collection is concerned? We'll take a short break. Don't go away.